Good morning, Britain. Holiday hopes hang in the balance as the government prepares to update its green list of quarantine-free destinations today. It's reported a new variant from Nepal could threaten travel plans. Boris on the back foot. The Prime Minister is facing a major rebellion from his own MPs over plans to slash foreign aid. Fit for a princess, Diana's famous wedding gown goes on display at Kensington Palace for the first time in 25 years. We'll be talking to designer Elizabeth Emmanuel at just after 7. And win, lose, draw. It's a mixed bag of results for the home nations as only England managed to scrape a victory ahead of next week's Euros.
And some winners and losers in the world of weather. It's a misty morning here at Brighton Beach as it is around many coastal areas. Today is one of sunshine, but also some showers. All the details of that and more coming up on Good Morning Britain.
Thursday, 3rd of June 2021. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Sean Fletcher.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock. Good to have you with us. We're here all the way through until 9 a.m. with Richard Madeley and Charlotte joining me from 6:30. First, though, our top story. The green list of countries holidaymakers can visit without having to go into quarantine will be updated today. Only a handful of destinations are expected to be added, and there are fears Portugal could be moved off the green list and into amber over concerns that there is a mutant strain thought to have originated in Nepal. Nick Dixon is at Gatwick for us. Good morning to you, Nick. How concerned are experts about this new variant?
Morning, Sean. Of course, any new strain of the virus will be a huge concern and very carefully watched by the government. The issue with this Nepal strain is that it may well have spread into European countries already and potentially be resistant to the vaccines. Now, that hasn't been confirmed just yet. Portugal certainly is one country that's been mentioned, a country of concern. It's also a country that in recent weeks has had a relatively large spike in case numbers, and there is that speculation that it could be removed from the green list today with a government announcement. In terms of other major tourist destinations for UK holidaymakers, the likes of Spain, France, Italy, it looks like it could be much later in June, potentially well into July before they are moved onto the green list. But the likes of Malta, some of the Greek islands as well, could go green today.
Just like on the roads, the traffic light system for travelling abroad seems to be changing all the time. Today's announcement is expected to involve some winners, but not many.
Don't get your hopes up. At the moment, we've got lovely Gibraltar and Portugal, and that will be added by Malta, maybe a sprinkling of Greek islands, but not the big hitters such as Spain, Italy, France and mainland Greece.
There's reports this morning that Portugal could be demoted to the amber list amid rising infection rates and new variants. A bitter blow to travellers who face cutting their holiday short or quarantining at home for 10 days. Tourism bosses in Malta, however, are optimistic they will be moved to the green list.
The UK is a hugely important market for our tourism. And so it makes a huge difference for us whether we're on the green list, and that's why it's very exciting.
The Prime Minister has made no apology for the travel uncertainty.
We will have no hesitation in moving countries from the green list to the amber list to the red list.
And continues to remain open-minded about the prospect of lockdown fully lifting in England on July 21st. But while the roadmap looks bumpy, the vaccination rollout is much smoother. The UK could hit another milestone today with more than half of all adults getting double dosed. Booking a holiday abroad to celebrate, though, might have to wait a few weeks longer. Nick Dixon, Good Morning Britain.
The Prime Minister's plans to slash foreign aid spending has caused a surprise rebellion amongst his own MPs, which could force the government to reverse its decision. It comes as ministers face criticism for failing to provide enough money to fund a proper schools recovery plan. Our chief correspondent, Richard Gaisford, is at Westminster for us. Richard, Boris Johnson cut the foreign aid budget to help pay for the pandemic, but he's met some opposition, hasn't he?
Yeah, and that's in the form of a man called Andrew Mitchell, who is the former Overseas Development Minister. Sean, he believes he has the backing of at least 45 Tory MPs to force an amendment to a bill next week, which would ensure the government makes up any shortfall in foreign aid spending. Now, that cut from 0.7% of GDP to 0.5% might not sound very much. It equates to about £4 billion. But the MPs say that these funding cuts to projects right the way around the world is having a disproportionate and a massive effect on some of the poorest people on the planet through their health and education. They believe not only are lives being put at risk, but also Britain's reputation is being put at risk as it gets ready to host the G7 summit next week.
Women will die because of these cuts to family planning. So I have joined forces with colleagues to make sure that we can have a vote on it, and I will be voting to keep that 0.7%.
Well, there's continued fallout, as you mentioned, from the abrupt resignation of Sir Kevin Collins late yesterday, the man who the government brought in to lead the way out of all of the crisis in education that came through the pandemic. He's now walking away, not at all happy that the money he asked for to get the job done wasn't delivered. And even the Tory chair of the Education Select Committee says an awful lot more needs to be given on top of that £1.4 billion.
That Jewish catch-up money announced is a hefty starter, but it's not the main course. And the main course has to be a proper long-term plan for education, properly resourced with a serious long-term funding settlement.
Well, huge pressure building now on Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary. And this morning, Sean, the Lib Dems are calling for his resignation.
Richard, thanks very much indeed. Well, as under-30s prepare to be called for their COVID jab, a survey for Good Morning Britain has revealed that 1 in 5 18 to 29-year-olds will either refuse to take the vaccine when offered or are undecided about whether or not to take it. Gargi Patel reports.
Before she got COVID last September, Sally McCreath loved going out for meals and was an active rock climber. But months later, she's suffering memory lapses, shortness of breath, and her sense of smell and taste have warped so badly she lost 2 stone.
Absolutely debilitating. I would have naturally assumed that would have been the people who had been hospitalised, who were elderly or kind of in the clinically vulnerable groups.
Sally is one of more than 1 million sufferers affected by long COVID, where symptoms continue sometimes for months, and many of them are younger people. Young health workers in the northwest of England are now relaunching their campaign to spread the facts, not the virus, encouraging young people to get vaccinated and to stop misinformation.
Even if you're young and fit, it can take ages to recover.
It comes as a Good Morning Britain survey found 1 in 5 under-30s won't take up the jab. Of those refusing, a third believe it's harmful, and 1 in 4 of them were influenced by social media. Health experts are warning that younger people are not immune. Vaccination is key in fighting COVID. Gargi Patel, Good Morning Britain.
It's one of the most famous wedding dresses in history, and now royal fans can see the gown Princess Diana wore when she married Prince Charles in 1981. It'll go on display at her former home at Kensington Palace. Louisa James is at St Paul's Cathedral for us. Louisa, good morning. So the public first saw her dress 40 years ago.
Yeah, 40 years ago next month, can you believe it? And I think the combination of that dramatic dress and these grand steps really made on that day for one of the most memorable images. So then Diana Spencer walked up the steps and into St Paul's Cathedral to get married. And interestingly, it was the choice of this venue which actually determined the design of the dress, because it was chosen because it could take so many guests. But then the wedding dress designers felt they needed to create something which I suppose could fill that space, and particularly that huge aisle that she had to walk down on the day. I saw it yesterday in person. I think it was quite surprising, really, because those grainy images from the 80s really don't do it justice.
When the door of the glass coach opened outside St Paul's Cathedral in July 1981, the waiting crowd and millions around the world finally got the first glimpse of what would become the most iconic wedding dress in history.
It was incredibly exciting to see the dress for real for the first time, because you notice all those beautiful little details, and I think when you see it close to, as visitors to the exhibition will, you get a sense of that sparkle, all that beautiful sequins and the care and the love that was put into it.
The dress was designed by David and Elizabeth Emmanuel, with plenty of input from Diana herself, including on the train, at 25 foot, still the longest in royal history. And every eventuality was planned for.
Just in case something was spilt on the skirt, they actually created a second skirt which could go over this one, so it would still look perfect. And in case of rain, they created a matching parasol of the same silk to protect Diana if the weather had been bad.
The Crown has brought the dress to a new audience. This episode streamed by 29 million people, more than watched TV coverage in Britain of the real wedding. Diana's will left the dress to her sons. They agreed to lend it to the exhibition and are due to reunite this summer to unveil a statue of their mother on what would have been her 60th birthday. The dress that transformed a shy 20-year-old into a princess and a fashion icon will be on display at her former home until January. Louisa James, Good Morning Britain.
Now, preparations for the European Championship got underway for the home nations ahead of next week's Euros. England got off to a winning start against Austria. Scotland drew with the Netherlands and Wales lost out to France. But there's likely to be some cause for concern for England's manager Gareth Southgate after one of his key players got a late injury. Jonathan Swain is at the Riverside Stadium in Middlesbrough for us, where that game against Austria was played. Jonathan, does this mean Gareth Southgate is going to have to reassess his 26-man squad?
Morning, Sean. Well, you know, don't you, before these important pre-tournament friendly matches, all the players are thinking about is just don't get injured. And then in the second half, Trent Alexander-Arnold, he limps off, looking really distraught, shirt over his head. Yes, he was injured. Tests will need to be carried out on his thigh, but judging by his reaction and that of the manager Gareth Southgate last night, it just seemed to be a bit of concern over whether he'll be able to start against Croatia in England's first match a week on Sunday. That was perhaps one of the main talking points. Other than that, it was a pretty unspectacular match here in Middlesbrough. A mixed bag of results, as you say, for Scotland and for Wales. But the fans, though, were very thankful to be at least back in the stadium watching some international football.
Strolling out of the stadium rather than singing. Yes, it was that kind of game.
You know, obviously it's a warm-up game, there's a lot of work to be done, but you know, it's all promising for the Euros, hopefully.
Personally, I would have stuck to the 11 that he's going to take to the Euros because it's a pre-warm-up match, and I think that would have been the best idea for today.
Great game, and there was one person who stood out to me, and that was Ollie Watkins.
England finally took the lead with Grealish and Lingard combining well for Saka to finish his first international goal.
Well, friendlies are always tricky matches. It wasn't particularly entertaining, and there's some criticism of the England manager for using a mixture of players who aren't necessarily going to be in the tournament.
You know, really difficult situation for those lads to miss out as they have. There's always this possibility that we could get more injuries, and those players that are with us will be those standby players.
Scotland's put in a positive display to draw 2-2 against the Netherlands, but Wales were down to 10 men for most of the match against France and lost 3-0 against the world champions. Fans were clearly happy to be back in the stadia, and there's a summer of much more ahead. Jonathan Swain, Good Morning Britain.
Let's take a look at the weather with Laura. She's live in Brighton. Morning, Laura. I was a bit further along the south coast yesterday in Worthing, and we had some specks of rain, actually, even though there was a lot of sun.
And that's the problem, we've got this heat and the humidity building, and I certainly felt it where I was yesterday at Weston-super-Mare, and as I left and headed east along the M4, suddenly the clouds developed and the showers moved through. It was a whole band that moved through central southern England, southwest, the Midlands, and it's now journeying its way northwards. And it's sort of a really messy picture, not just for today, for the next few days, with this battleground set up with the warm, mild, humid air, which is making it this morning here pretty foggy in Brighton, let me tell you. The plan is to head up the Brighton I360 up to 450 feet to get beautiful views. We can't even see the top of it at the moment, but it will lift and clear, I promise you. But weather-wise, let me tell you what's going on. It's all down to, as usual, the jet stream. It sits to our north at the moment, and it's bringing with it warm conditions, milder air, but we will slowly start to see it getting closer and closer, and the closer it gets, that brings an increased chance of rain and low pressures. So the pressure chart at the moment shows that low pressure isn't very far away, and it's tied in with that we've got bands of showers and rain moving through for the next few days. Not persistent, not heavy, nuisance value, perhaps not quite enough to water those dry gardens. But this is how it looks for today. Yes, there'll be some sunshine, also some showers. But first thing this morning, the focus for our wet weather, that band that journeyed northwards, made its way now to western areas of Scotland. So a wet start to the day here, outbreaks of showery rain. Elsewhere, as we head through the day today, we've got the low cloud mist and fog that's rolled in. It will take a while, but it will lift and then break and then burn back towards the coast, again revealing some much needed sunshine. This afternoon that could trigger a few scattered showers. Where you get them, they'll be heavy, particularly for eastern areas of England, Northern Ireland, I think they're most likely areas. And in the sunshine, temperatures today easily into the 20s, 26, maybe 27 in the southeast, so not as quite as warm as the 28.3 degrees that we got yesterday. Now it's worth pointing out as we head through this evening and overnight tonight, the humidity builds. We could see that low cloud mist rolling back in, and then our focus turns to the southeast of England. A band of rain and showers move up, so tomorrow looks wet for eastern areas of England, but dry, sunny and warm elsewhere.
Thank you, Laura. Good Morning Britain is here all the way through until 9 o'clock with Richard Madeley and Charlotte here from 6:30. They'll be speaking to the 17-year-old teenager who fought off a black bear after it attacked her dogs. Look at those pictures. Wow. You do not want to be doing that. That's after 7. We'll be speaking to her. Plus, Oscar winner Julianne Moore tells Richard Arnold how her husband stopped her from eating popcorn every night during lockdown. That's at 6:25. First, let's get the news, travel and weather. Where you are. Still can't get over that bear.
Hello, I'm Emily with the headlines. In the Anglia region, hospices providing palliative care across the east say they desperately need more nurses. St Clair Hospice in Harlow is joining a campaign to highlight the current shortfall and attract more trained nurses to work in the sector. Around 1 in 10 palliative care positions are currently vacant. The parents of twin boys from Dis who had to go to Italy for gene therapy for a progressive disorder which killed their sister Paige are welcoming news that a similar treatment has now been given in the UK. Oscar and Felix Scott, who'll be 6 soon, were babies when they took part in a pioneering trial in Milan.
It was hard having to travel to Italy, having to leave Paige back here while we travelled to Italy, and obviously being away for 4 months. Obviously, if the treatment had been here in the UK, it would have made things logistically a lot easier.
An extra £1.2 million is to be spent on education support for children in Ipswich. The town is one of 12 opportunity areas which launched 4 years ago and is now being extended. The cash will be spent on helping children catch up after the pandemic with extra support in maths and English. £400,000 is to be spent in Northamptonshire to tackle neighbourhood crime. It will go towards gates around alleyways, increased street lighting and improved CCTV. The money is coming from the government's Safer Streets Fund. Meanwhile, funding for a £5 million interchange at Flitwick train station has been given the go-ahead. When completed, the interchange will connect bus and rail routes. The work is due to start in the summer. People in Felixstowe are being asked to vote for their favourite name for a planned beach village on the town's south seafront. Residents have until the end of July to have their say on the 5 names suggested. And the region's Queen of Knitting is showing off her full collection of woolen wonders at the Norfolk Makers Festival. Sandringham in Stitches and the NHS Knittingdale Hospital are just a couple of Margaret Seaman's masterpieces. The 92-year-old has now raised £50,000 for charity.
You feel you're doing some good, especially now with this for the National Health Service. We're raising money for a good cause. They're all worth that. Every single nurse is worth something.
Very well done, Margaret. Well, the weather today, very warm again with a chance of a bit of cloud. Highs 27 degrees, that's 81 Fahrenheit.
Let's take a look at the front pages. The Times reports the Prime Minister has been accused of failing a generation of children by the man he appointed to lead the government's recovery task force for schools. The Daily Mail claims a new COVID variant from Nepal, which has spread to Europe, could threaten foreign holidays as ministers prepare to update their travel green list later today. And The Sun asks, why wait for the green list when staycations are hotting up and breweries are working flat out to supply pubs with beer? Now, the government is due to update its traffic light system around testing and quarantining later today. The move comes as it's claimed a new COVID variant from Nepal could threaten foreign holidays. Well, joining us now is Dr. David Nabarro, Special Envoy on COVID-19 to the World Health Organization. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How do you do?
Yeah, really good. Although maybe a little bit worried, like lots of people. Another mutant strain we hear of, this time coming from Nepal, we think. Should we be worried?
Well, I'm going to say to everybody, this is a virus that's going to mutate and mutate and mutate. As long as there's enough around, we're going to see variants emerging from time to time. And sometimes those variants will be more easily transmitted. Others perhaps will have different effects on the body. And I don't think that we as a race should be getting alarmed each time a variant appears. What instead we need to do is to make certain that we do everything possible to limit the spread of these variants by the way we behave. So keep the physical distancing and mask wearing going for the time being. And on planning the future, we're going to have to be ready for some bumps. We won't always be able to do exactly what we propose to do, and that's because for the time being, we've got a pandemic that is still ferocious and affecting the majority of the world.
So one of the big questions that's always asked whenever we hear of a new variant is, will the vaccines work on it, or will it be better than the vaccines? Do we know anything about this new variant and whether the vaccines are effective against it?
Well, what happens is not so much that the vaccines stop working when a new version of the virus appears. It's just that perhaps vaccines, and some vaccines, I don't mean all of them, may be less effective. And finding that out takes time. You can't just work it out immediately. You can't even assess it just from the laboratory. You need to study what happens, and that will take a week or two, or three even. But I want to say to everybody, there will be variants appearing, and some of them will worry us in terms of being able to break through the protection from the vaccine. But we're going to have to go on working out how to have our lives and be able to keep going. And in fact, the steps that we learned to do in the beginning of the pandemic, particularly being able to isolate people who've got symptoms of disease and maintaining the physical distancing and mask wearing for the time being, these still really matter. And that's what we're encouraging people to do. Also, we're encouraging more widespread distribution of vaccines, because we've got to be able to make sure that people in poor countries who are at risk can be vaccinated if at all possible. That will have a huge impact on the way in which this pandemic is affecting lives.
David, one of the things that the characteristics of this pandemic is there's a sort of lag time between what we know from the figures and what's actually happening now. So it's like a 2-week lag time. So we sort of know, we have some figures, but we know that was happening 2 weeks ago. So is it likely that actually this Nepal strain has spread throughout Europe and the UK? And if so, what would you advise Boris Johnson and the government in terms of travel? Because, you know, there are all sorts of criticisms about how we dealt with the Indian variant and we didn't act quick enough.
Well, the first thing to say is that we're not going to be able to have any country hermetically seal its borders if at the same time it's trying to get the economy going again and life going again. So instead, I do propose that we put in place the strongest possible defences in all countries that can deal with any new variant as it appears. Very good capacity to look at the virus in detail and at the same time to be able to respond with some movement restrictions when the variant does appear. But basically, the rest of us getting on with life as we know it. So I don't personally want to suggest that every time there's evidence of a new variant, that then leads to a complete change of policy. Instead, putting in place policies that enable us to defend against variants as they appear must be the way ahead for the future. And it's the way that Britain is going.
OK, Dr. David Nabarro, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, Richard's here with today's entertainment news, and you've been entertaining an Academy Award winner.
I have indeed. I'd whip out the brasso to polish this woman's gong any time. She uses sass, sophistication, and boy, is she a lady. I'm talking, of course, about Oscar-winning actress Julianne Moore. Recently called up over the Zoom machine to talk to her about her leading role in the latest chilling offering from the mind of Stephen King. Julianne, or Jules as I like to call her, takes on the titular role in Lisey's Story, an 8-part series for Apple TV in which a series of unsettling events lead Lisey to face memories of her marriage and dead husband that she has deliberately blocked out of her mind. But we hear from the lady herself. Let's have a butcher's at her in action.
She won't let them go. I'll get those papers for you. Scotland, it's books changing.
Do you remember that night you asked if I was crazy?
I believed in it. That's how strong his imagination is.
There's a place. I'll take you there.
What is this? Where are we?
You solve all the riddles, find all the clues, and you get a prize.
So it's quite a departure from Glee, as you've probably gathered. Now, Julianne told me all about what it was like inhabiting the incredible mind of horror legend Stephen King, as you saw there, and also playing a widow who has survived her husband and everything in between. Here's what she had to say.
We couldn't have asked for somebody who was a better partner. He was so incredibly generous. He was always available to talk to. He would be on this. He was on the set so many times. If he wasn't on the set, he would be like a text away. This is about a relationship, a long-term relationship, and the secret world that a couple shares. Right? You know, the way you kind of witness each other's lives, and you build your own world together. But because it's Stephen King, that world that they build is literally made manifest in the supernatural.
And it really is a compelling watch, I can tell you. I've sat through all 8 hours. Keeping on the same subject, Julianne also spoke about how she survived lockdown with her own hubby of 25 years. Here you go.
If I weren't with my husband during the lockdown, I would have starved to death. I would have just had popcorn every night, and that would have been it. But he's such a great cook, and he made all this beautiful food, and we really enjoyed it. We had our whole routine. I felt very fortunate to be able to be with him during this period, because it's hard. It was a hard time for everybody, and to have someone to kind of get through it with I was very grateful for it.
Amen to that. You can catch Julianne in Lisey's Story when it drops on Apple TV Plus this Friday. And finally, he's a singer, an actor, an all-round star, and now he's also set to become a master of ceremony to boot. Yep. Ollie Alexander is set to host YouTube's virtual Pride Party, which takes place on June 25th on The Tube. He's going to be joined by a gaggle of icons, including Demi Lovato, Monroe Bergdorf, Marwan Rizwan, and a few of RuPaul's Drag Race stars, all hosted from a sticky-floored East London pub. And believe me, I've been to that pub. You need 4-wheel drive to get to the bar. It promises non-stop entertainment and aid of raising cash for AKT, which supports LGBT plus young people across the UK facing homelessness or living in a hostile environment. One to watch. And the YouTube Pride 21 kicks off on the Years and Years YouTube channel at 8 p.m. on June 25th. Party for everyone.
Looking forward to it. Richard, thank you. Coming up next, Richard Madeley and Charlotte will be here in just a moment, and they'll be talking to one of the 2 British deep-sea divers involved in the extraordinary rescue of the Tide Cave Boys back in 2018. Plus, as Princess Diana's wedding dress goes on display today, they'll hear the lengths designer Elizabeth Emanuel went to keep its details a secret.
We predict showers. Warm showers. Do you see? Proud sponsors of Good Morning Britain National Weather. Boxed boilers.
Good morning to you from a pretty misty and foggy Brighton Beach this morning. I'll be heading up the Brighton I-360 later on this morning, hoping to catch some sights and also hoping this mist and low cloud and fog starts to lift. And it is something that's plagued coastal areas, particularly through eastern England and eastern Scotland for the last few days. Yet again, it's rolled back in again with the high humidity air and our high temperatures. But it will burn back through the coast. Yes, it will, as we head through the day, and sunshine will return. But a really messy outlook for today's forecast, because we have some showers through northern areas of the UK. So northern England, western Scotland, outbreaks of rain, some scattered showers to greet us first thing. Fair bit of cloud around us as well, but the cloud and mist will slowly lift and burn off. Then it's a day of sunny spells, but the risk of some isolated showers developing, particularly for some eastern areas. Top temperatures today in the southeast will be holding to that warmth, still around about 26, maybe 27 degrees, but cooler out towards the west. Well, less warm than we've seen over the last few days, with the risk of a few scattered showers developing. But our outlook for the next 7 days is changeable, but it's also staying warm. Not as warm as it has been over the last 7 days. So Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, temperatures still today are above our average. They slowly sort of come down to a little nearer to average as we head through the next few days. Looking at our percentage chance of rainfall, well, it remains low throughout, but we do have the risk of some showers or some outbreaks of rain through the next few days before high pressure builds back in next week and things turn dry yet again. The outlook for the rest of England and Wales, away from the north of England, for the next 7 days. Again, well, today is our warmest day. That heat and humidity holds on particularly to the east and the southeast again tomorrow, before our temperatures tend to moderate into the low 20s for our max temperatures. And then looking at our percentage chance of rainfall, while it's relatively low today and also again into the weekend, we see the risk of some showers and thunderstorms. So some places dry all day long, showers most likely through eastern areas. And again, high pressure means it turns drier into next week. For the weather where you are in detail, go to itv.com/weather.